It started with one sentence and it split my world in half. My name is Quinn Barrett, 33, an interior designer living in Santa Fe. Until that afternoon, I believed family meant loyalty. Then my phone rang. "Your sister didn't want you there?" my mother said. I froze. "Didn't want me, where the family vacation?" She replied calm, as if reading a grocery list. I blinked. "You're serious? She just thinks you'd ruin the mood." Last week, I had sent $5,500 to help them pay the rent and utilities. My throat tightened. "So that's what I'm worth now, a mood." She said nothing. The silence on the line was heavier than anything I'd ever felt. I hung up. For a moment, I sat at my desk staring at the phone, waiting for a message, an apology, an explanation, anything. But nothing came. Just silence, the kind that says more than words ever could. All this time, I'd been paying for a seat at a table I was never invited to. I opened my laptop and looked at the list of automatic payments, electricity, water, monthly transfers, all pulling money from my account like clockwork. My finger hovered over the cancel button, trembling slightly. And then I pressed it. If everything stopped, what would happen? A part of me needed to know. A week later, 50 missed calls flashed on my screen, one after another, and I realized this was only the beginning. Before I continue, drop a comment with your city and the time you're watching this. I want to see just how far this moment has traveled. The next morning, I opened Instagram and my stomach twisted. There, it was a photo of my family standing in front of a luxury resort in Aspen, Colorado. My sister Sabrina stood at the center holding a champagne glass surrounded by our parents and her husband. Everyone was smiling, radiant, carefree, perfectly framed by the snow-dusted mountains behind them. The caption read, "Weekend escape with my favorite people." My favorite people. I stared at those 3 words until they blurred. No tag, no mention, not even a hint that I existed. Just a carousel of glossy moments, Dad holding ski poles, Mom laughing by the fireplace, Sabrina in a fur-lined coat posing like she owned the place. The comments were endless. "Beautiful family. Wish I were there." "Sab looks like the perfect weekend," and Sabrina replied to everyone, heart's laughter warmth. I scrolled and scrolled, hoping for one trace of me. Nothing. Not a single reminder I was part of that family. I checked my DMs expecting at least a message from Mom or Dad, maybe a "wish you were here." But my inbox was empty. It wasn't the silence that hurt. It was the certainty that no one thought to reach out. I locked my phone and leaned back on the couch, the quiet of my apartment pressing in like thick air. For a long time, I just sat there watching the sunlight crawl across the floor, wondering when exactly I became the outsider. Then I called Dad. "Hey, sweetie," he said, light and casual. In the background, I heard chatter, clinking glasses, restaurant noise. "Everything okay? I just saw the photos," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You're in Aspen?" He paused. "Yeah, Sabrina booked it last minute. Thought it'd be nice for everyone to unwind." "Everyone," I repeated, my voice sharp. "She said you needed a break," he added. "A break from what?" I asked quietly. "From everything. You've been working so hard. She didn't want you to feel pressured to come." "So she decided that for me," I said. "Don't take it personally," he murmured. "Your sister just wanted peace." "A break from my own family," I whispered. Silence. Then I heard Sabrina's voice calling for him in the background. He muttered something, then said quickly, "We'll talk later." "Okay," and hung up. I sat there, phone still in my hand, the hum of disconnection ringing louder than words. The rest of the day passed in fragments. I answered emails, sketched floor plans, pretended to focus, but that caption echoed in my head. My favorite people. By evening, I checked Instagram again. Sabrina had posted a new story, a slow-motion toast by the bonfire. The caption read, "Family time is everything." That one cracked something open inside me. I wasn't furious. I was hollow. I set the phone down, but the image clung to me, their laughter, their closeness, their circle that had no room for me. I walked onto my balcony, cold air biting my cheeks. The city stretched below, small lights flickering against the dark. I leaned on the railing, exhaling hard. Maybe I'd done something wrong. Missed a call, skipped a visit. My mind scrambled through memories, searching for a reason I'd been erased. Then I remembered Thanksgiving, Sabrina criticizing everything I did, the wine, my clothes, my laugh. Dad tried to keep peace. Mom smiled through the tension, and I'd left early. I thought walking away was maturity, but to her, it was weakness, permission to cut me out. Now her captions made sense. She didn't see me as family. She saw me as an interruption. I went inside, opened my laptop, and looked at my pending payments, the rent transfer, the monthly support. My finger hovered over cancel. I hesitated just for a breath, then pressed it. For once, I didn't feel guilt. Just release. That night, I turned off the lights and let the street lamps fill the room. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. No messages, no calls, no apologies. But I wasn't waiting anymore. For years, I had paid for peace that never came. I had funded a version of family where love was conditional, and silence was the thank you note. Now the silence felt like freedom. That night, the wind slipped through the narrow cracks of my apartment, carrying with it a strange quiet, the kind that sits heavy before a decision is made. I sat cross-legged on my bed, laptop open, the blue glow of the screen painting the room in pale light. My online banking tab blinked patiently, waiting for me to move. My cursor hovered over the list of automatic transfers, each one neatly labeled utilities, rent for their house in Albuquerque, the monthly allowance I'd been sending for years. I clicked edit, then cancel. One by one, I erased the patterns of obligation I'd built. Each confirmation click sounded sharper than the last, echoing through the silence. It felt like cutting threads, delicate, necessary, irreversible. When the final transaction disappeared, a strange calm filled the space. My chest felt lighter, though my hands trembled. For so long, money had been my way of staying connected. My apology, my proof of loyalty, my peace offering. Tonight it was just gone. I took a deep breath and opened a blank email. My fingers hesitated above the keyboard. Then I typed, "Please don't contact me about money again. Mom, I need space. Please don't ask me for money anymore. I hope you understand. Quinn." I stared at the words for a long moment. There was no anger in them, only exhaustion. I hovered over send, exhaled slowly, and pressed the key. The sound of the email whooshing away felt final, like the end of a season. I shut the laptop and walked to the small dresser by the window. On it sat a framed photo of me, with my family, taken years ago before things started to fracture. I picked it up. Everyone looked so close in that picture. Sabrina's arm looped around my shoulder, Dad's grin wide, Mom's hand resting softly on Sabrina's back. I traced the outline of my own face with a fingertip and whispered, "I hope you find what you're looking for." Then I placed the frame face down. I wasn't done yet. There was still one more thing to do. I reopened my banking app and navigated to the joint account, the one I had opened years ago for emergency expenses. My parents had access to it. I'd been too trusting back then. The balance stared back at me, enough to cover a few more months of comfort for them. For the first time, I realized how much of myself was sitting there, unnoticed, unappreciated. I withdrew every cent. When the confirmation screen popped up, transfer complete, I leaned back, heart steady. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. The night air outside grew sharper. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and sat by the window, the desert moon faint behind a veil of thin clouds. The lights of Santa Fe shimmered below like a constellation scattered across the sand. I had never really seen the city this way, quiet, wide, indifferent. Maybe it had always been waiting for me to stop waiting for them. My phone buzzed once. A text from Lydia, my oldest friend since college. "Saw your story. You okay?" I hesitated, then called her. Her voice came through warm and steady, the kind that softens even the hardest moments. So she said, "You finally pulled the plug." I did. I admitted the words heavy and light at the same time. Everything's canceled. Transfers, emails, accounts. All of it. Good, she said without hesitation. Let them feel the silence. Her words sank deep. Let them feel the silence. For so long, silence had been something I feared, a punishment, a sign of disconnection. But now it sounded like balance, like peace reclaiming its place. We talked for a while, nothing serious, just small things. Her cat knocking something over, a client who wouldn't stop emailing. She made me laugh for the first time in weeks. When we hung up, I felt anchored again, if only slightly. The apartment was quiet once more. I poured myself a glass of water, sat by the window, and watched as a single car moved slowly down the road below, headlights tracing the curve of the street. The desert wind shifted again, brushing against the glass. Somewhere, a coyote called, distant, mournful, almost like a song. I thought about what tomorrow might bring, phone calls maybe, emails, apologies disguised as confusion, but I didn't dread them. For the first time, I felt no urgency to explain myself, no impulse to fix what had broken. I had already done enough. I opened my notebook, the one I kept for work sketches, and on a blank page I wrote 5 words in small, neat letters. "You can stop giving now." I underlined it once, then closed the cover. A part of me had always equated love with giving money, attention, patience, understanding. But giving without respect is just losing. I'd lost enough. Tonight, I chose to stop. As the clock ticked toward midnight, I looked out at the city one more time. The glow of Santa Fe stretched to the horizon, the desert beyond dark and endless. My reflection in the window looked calmer than I remembered. My eyes didn't carry the same exhaustion. I wasn't the person who waited by the phone anymore. I was someone who had finally hung up. I whispered quietly to myself, "Let them call if they need to." And I smiled, not out of triumph, but out of peace. The heater hummed softly, filling the silence that followed. For the first time in years, I didn't need anyone to fill it for me. By Friday, my phone looked like it was on fire. Notifications exploded across the screen, texts from Mom, Dad, and even Derek, my brother-in-law, all piling on top of each other. "Call us back. This isn't funny, Quinn. You're overreacting. Pick up the phone, sweetheart." The irony of that last one almost made me laugh. Sweetheart. The word felt hollow now, stripped of warmth, like something borrowed from a script they no longer believed in. The messages poured in faster than I could clear them. I muted the group chat, then my personal one, then the entire message app altogether. But my screen kept lighting up, one buzz after another, like a pulse that wouldn't die. I put it face down, took a deep breath, and tried to work. I opened my design program, stared at a client's kitchen layout for 10 minutes, and realized I hadn't actually seen a single line. My head was somewhere else, buried in a hurricane of guilt, confusion, and the faintest, strangest sense of freedom. Then came the email. At first, I thought it was from a client. It had that same professional tone in the subject line, "Follow-up meeting, urgent." But when I opened it, the words froze me in place. "Dear Mr. Jensen, this is Quinn Barrett's mother. I'm deeply worried about her. She's been under a lot of stress lately and not acting like herself. I hope you can check in on her. She needs guidance and balance." I stared at the screen, jaw tight. My mother had written to my boss. She had actually contacted Mr. Jensen, the director of the design firm I worked for. My first thought wasn't anger, it was disbelief. The woman who used to brag about how independent I was had just told my employer I was unstable. Before I could process it, my office phone rang. The caller ID flashed Jensen R. For a second, I considered ignoring it, but then I answered. "Hi, Richard," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Quinn," he began, his tone gentle but careful. "Can you come by my office for a few minutes? No rush, just want to check in." My stomach nodded. Sure, I replied. Walking down that short hallway to his office felt longer than any corridor I'd ever crossed. When I stepped inside, Mr. Jensen gestured for me to sit. He wasn't the intimidating kind of boss, gray hair glasses, the type who preferred listening to speaking. On his desk sat a small cactus, a ceramic mug, and my mother's email printed neatly on paper. He smiled, not unkindly. I got a message from your mother? He said, holding the paper up slightly. It caught me off guard. I kept my voice calm. Yeah, she tends to overstep. He nodded, leaning back. She seems worried about you. I know, I said, clasping my hands together. But I'm fine. Just setting boundaries. That's all. Something in my voice must have convinced him because he smiled again. Don't worry, he said softly. I get it. Families can be complicated. That single sentence released a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. He didn't pry. He didn't lecture. He just understood. And in that moment, I realized how easy it was for a stranger to show more respect for my privacy than my own family ever had. When I left his office, the world outside felt sharper, clearer. I walked past the glass windows overlooking the parking lot where sunlight bounced off the windshields in flashes of gold. For the first time that week, I breathed without feeling like it cost something. But peace never lasts long. By the time I got home that evening, my voicemail was full. Dozens of missed calls. The last message was from Mom, her voice trembling between apology and accusation. Quinn, please, we just want to talk. You can't do this to us. Call me back. Then Dad's voice. We didn't mean for things to get this far. Sabrina's just worried. You shouldn't punish everyone for a misunderstanding. And finally, Derek. You need to fix this, Quinn. Your parents are wrecked. I dropped the phone onto the counter and laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how predictable it all was. They weren't calling because they missed me. They were calling because the money was gone. The silence had become louder than their comfort zone. I walked to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and leaned against the counter. My apartment was dim, except for the soft hum of the city lights outside. I sipped slowly, listening to the faint buzz of my phone vibrating again and again on the marble surface. It was almost hypnotic, the rhythm of desperation on repeat. Then it happened. My phone lit up with a new number, Mr. Jensen's office line. My chest tightened, but I answered. Quinn, sorry to bother you again, his voice said gently. Your mother called the office today. My blood went cold. She what? She told the receptionist you might be having a breakdown. She wanted to make sure someone was checking in on you. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. I'm so sorry, Richard. She had no right to do that. He paused. It's okay. I told her you're doing great work, that you seem focused and capable. I didn't give her any details, but just so you know, I blocked her number from the office line. That was the moment it hit me. They had crossed every possible line, calling my boss, pretending to be concerned when all they wanted was control. My silence had made them desperate. When the call ended, I sat in the dark for a long time. The only sound was the steady hum of the heater and the faint thud of my heartbeat in my ears. I stared at my phone, now glowing again with more missed calls. Mom, Dad, Derek, Sabrina. Each name another weight I didn't want to carry anymore. Without hesitation, I opened my contacts list. One by one, I pressed block. Each confirmation felt cleaner than the last. The screen dimmed. The apartment fell into a peaceful hush. Outside, the city lights flickered like embers, and I sat by the window with a blanket wrapped around me. The night stretched wide and still, Santa Fe glowing faintly under the stars. My phone lay face down on the table. I could feel it buzzing occasionally, fighting for attention I would no longer give. After a while, the vibration stopped. For the first time all week, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt deserved. Hours passed before curiosity made me flip the phone over. The screen blinked alive, 50 missed calls. I looked at it for a long time, then turned it face down again. 2 days later, my name was all over Facebook and not in a good way. I was making coffee when Lydia texted me a link. You might want to see this. I opened it still half asleep and nearly dropped my mug. There it was, a long post by Sabrina Henderson paired with a perfect family photo at a lakeside cafe. The caption said, "Money changes people. Some forget their own blood. No matter how much you do for them, they'll find a way to make you the villain." The words were sugar-coated but aimed straight at me. My throat tightened as I scrolled through the comments. Cousins, aunts, old family friends, all cheering her on. So true, Sabrina. You don't need that kind of negativity. Even Aunt Carol wrote, "Some people forget who helped them when they had nothing." Within 3 hours, the post had 200 likes, dozens of shares, and a thread of sympathy for her pain. I sat there frozen, the smell of burnt coffee filling the kitchen. For a moment, I wanted to reply to remind them that I had been the one covering Mom and Dad's bills, helping with her son's daycare, fixing her car after she crashed it. But I knew better. They didn't want the truth. They wanted a story to believe in, one that made Sabrina the saint and me the sinner. Still, I took a screenshot and sent it to Lydia with a short message. "Guess I'm the villain now." She replied minutes later, "Don't take the bait." Easy for her to say. She wasn't the one being publicly crucified under the banner of family. By noon, my notifications were relentless tags, messages, even calls from distant relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years, but now felt entitled to check in. One message read, "Hey, saw something about your family on Facebook. Hope you're okay." Another, "Just remember, forgiveness goes a long way." Forgiveness. As if I'd done something wrong. I put my phone down, grabbed my keys, and left the apartment. The streets of Santa Fe were warm and alive, yet I felt like I was walking through static. I passed mural shops and the smell of roasted chilies drifting from an open market. For a second, I envied everyone who got to live without being misunderstood. When I returned home, the apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. I sat on the couch, opened my laptop, and stared at Sabrina's post again. Each word seemed to hum with smug satisfaction. I hovered over the comment box but stopped. Lydia's warning replayed in my head. Still, I couldn't stay quiet forever. Silence felt like surrender. So I clicked Create Post. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for nearly 10 minutes before I started typing. I didn't walk away from family. I walked away from being their wallet. Sometimes love gets confused with obligation. I hope one day they understand the difference. No names, no blame, just truth. I read it once more, took a breath, and pressed post. The response was immediate. Likes, comments, shares, but this time from people who actually knew me. Friends from college, coworkers, neighbors. Comments flooded in. "Good for you, Quinn. Proud of you for standing up for yourself. Family doesn't mean financial hostage." Within hours, my little paragraph had over 1,000 reactions. Someone even shared it on a Women Reclaiming Boundaries group. My story had escaped the family circle, and somehow that felt right. As the evening unfolded, something shifted. People began commenting under Sabrina's post, asking uncomfortable questions. "Wait, is this about money? Are you sure you're telling the whole story?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth had begun to defend itself. That night, my inbox filled with messages from strangers, from people who'd been through the same thing. Stories of siblings who drained them dry, parents who used guilt as a leash, cousins who equated love with loans. It was overwhelming, but it made me realize something. This wasn't just my story. It was hundreds of others. Thousands, maybe. By midnight, the dopamine rush had turned into exhaustion. I closed the app and stared at my reflection in the dark screen. My eyes looked tired but calm. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't anxious. Just done. I long pressed the Facebook icon until it wobbled. Then I deleted it. The app vanished, leaving a small, empty space on my home screen, and somehow that gap looked like peace. I stepped out onto the balcony with a cup of chamomile tea. The city glowed faintly below headlights, tracing slow rivers of light through the streets. The air was cool, and I could hear faint laughter from a nearby rooftop bar. I wrapped my sweater tighter and let the silence settle. Inside, my laptop pinged once more. I opened it out of habit. My post had reached 20,000 shares overnight. Buried in the comments, one line caught my eye. "Thank you for saying what so many of us are too afraid to." I smiled quietly, then closed the lid. The world outside still spun. Sabrina could keep her drama. The family could keep their whispers. But I had reclaimed something they couldn't: touch my peace. Sometimes the only way to be heard is to stop explaining. Sometimes walking away speaks louder than any defense ever could. That night, I slept like a person who no longer owed anyone an apology. The knock on my door came just after sunset. I wasn't expecting anyone. The desert light had just begun to fade, the sky streaked in burnt orange and violet when the sound came again, harder, impatient. I opened the door to see my mother, her eyes swollen from crying, clutching her purse like she was holding herself together. Behind her stood Sabrina, arms folded, phone in hand, expression sharp as glass. Neither of them had called or texted, they had simply shown up. "Can we come in?" Mom asked, her voice shaking with the effort of control. I stepped aside. "If you're here to talk, not yell." Sabrina walked past me before I'd even finished the sentence. "You've humiliated us online," she said, voice trembling, not from sadness, but fury. I shut the door behind them and replied quietly, "No, I just stopped pretending." The air in the room thickened. Mom looked around my apartment like she was seeing how far I'd drifted from her influence. Then she sighed, long and dramatic. "Quinn, how could you do this to your family? We've always been good to you." I almost laughed. "Good to me? You called my boss Mom. You turned a private fight into public gossip." Her eyes widened, wounded. "I was worried about you." "No," I interrupted. "You were worried about losing control." Sabrina scoffed, arms crossing tighter. "Wow, look at you playing the victim again. Cutting us off doesn't make you strong." I looked at her evenly. "No, Sabrina, it makes me free." She sneered. "You're heartless. Do you even know what Mom's been through? Everyone at church is whispering about us." Then maybe I said, stepping forward, "You shouldn't have lied to them." Mom began crying softly, pressing her fingers to her eyes. "We just want things back to normal, Quinn. Please restart the transfers. Let's fix this." Her words hit me harder than I wanted, not because of guilt, but because the only reconciliation she could imagine involved money. "You mean, start paying you again?" I said flatly. She opened her mouth but didn't deny it. I walked to the counter, opened a drawer, and pulled out a folder I had kept hidden for months. "You want to talk about family? Let's talk numbers." I placed the papers on the table. 3 years of mortgage payments, 8 months of daycare for your grandson, 4 car repairs, 2 hospital bills. And every time I was told it was temporary. Every time I believed you. Sabrina blinked, her confidence faltering. "You kept track." "Yes," I said. "Because no one else did." Mom whispered. "Family helps each other." "That's true," I replied, when it's not one-sided. The silence that followed was heavy enough to feel physical. For the first time, they both seemed smaller, not out of shame, but realization. Sabrina tried to speak, her voice brittle. "This isn't about money, Quinn. It's about the way you treated us." "Then stop acting like everything I gave was owed," I said. "If you wanted respect, you should have started by giving some." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Mom stepped closer, tears streaking her face. "We're your family. You can't just cut us out." I met her gaze, calm now. "You wanted a family without me. Now you have it." I opened the door. Sabrina glared at me, jaw tight. "You'll regret this." I already regretted staying quiet, I said. Mom lingered for a moment as if she wanted to say something else. Maybe sorry. Maybe nothing at all. Then lowered her head and stepped into the hallway. I closed the door gently. The click of the latch sounded final like a punctuation mark. I stood there for a moment, staring at the wood grain, breathing in the silence they left behind. Then I gathered the papers and returned them to the drawer, not as proof, but as closure. The apartment was still and dim. Outside, the last streaks of sunset gave way to the calm darkness of the Santa Fe night. My reflection in the window looked steadier than I remembered. My phone buzzed once a message from Lydia heard they came by. "You okay?" I typed back. "Better than okay." Then I silenced my phone. I made a cup of tea chamomile again and sat near the balcony door, letting the quiet fill every space they had occupied with noise. It was strange, the peace that follows confrontation, the kind that doesn't need victory, only release. I thought about Mom's trembling voice, Sabrina's anger, and the years I'd spent trying to earn their love with money. I had finally learned that some debts can't be repaid because they were never owed. The desert night outside was vast, cool, and still. Somewhere in the distance, a train passed its horn, echoing softly through the dark. I didn't feel lonely. I felt finished. Not bitter, not triumphant, just free. I looked again at my reflection and whispered, "No more pretending." A week later, Mr. Bennett called. His voice was polite, but uneasy. "Ms. Barrett, I just wanted to let you know your parents haven't paid rent for this month. I've given them extra time, but the landlord's threatening eviction." I paused, letting the words settle. "I see," I said quietly. "Thank you for letting me know." There was a long silence before he asked, "Should I expect your help again?" I took a slow breath. "No, Mr. Bennett. They'll figure it out." It wasn't cruel, it was truth. For years, I had been the solution to every problem they created. Now they'd have to learn how to live without the safety net they had mistaken for love. That night, curiosity got the best of me. I searched Sabrina's name online. Her Facebook was gone. Deleted, wiped clean. The same people who once cheered her on had moved to other dramas. Mom's number was still blocked, but I heard from a neighbor that they'd left the old house and moved to a smaller duplex on the edge of town. A humbler place, maybe one they could actually afford? I didn't feel satisfaction, only distance, the kind that comes when something heavy finally slips from your shoulders. I sat on my couch, laptop open, and stared at a half-written to-do list. Book the Seattle trip sat there unchecked, a quiet promise I had made to myself months ago. I clicked on it, found a flight for the following weekend, and booked it without hesitation. Seattle had always been a dream. The rain, the bookstores, the feeling of starting fresh where no one knew your history. This time, I wasn't running from family, I was walking toward myself. When I arrived, I stood by the waterfront, the air damp and cool, the sound of gulls overhead. The world felt bigger, freer, and I finally did too. As I watched the waves roll in, I thought about everything that had happened, not with anger, but with understanding. Boundaries don't make you heartless, they make you whole. I turned on my phone, camera smiled softly, and said to the viewers who had followed my story, "Respect isn't inherited, it's earned. And sometimes you have to lose people to find peace." I meant every word. Then I ended the recording, letting the sea breeze carry the last of it away. Thank you for staying till the end. What would you have done if you were me? Share your thoughts below, I'd really like to hear them.